You are simply divine. You are both human and divine. We are all of and from the same divine source. Are you ready to ignite the divine spark within you? Are you ready to become the fullest expression of the radiant love light being you truly are? Are you ready to lighten up?
Introducing your co-host, Suzanne Ross, and myself, Mithuyus Imhotep, your global transformers leading you into the golden age. Welcome to the Lighten Up Radio show, dedicated to the awakening and ascension of humanity. It's time to lighten up.
Hello and welcome to Lighten Up. I am your host, Suzanne Ross, and I am so excited about today's show because we're going to be talking about multi-dimensional aspects of being in the multi-dimensional realms. And I am here with my co-host, Mithuyus Imhotep. Welcome, Matthew.
Greetings. So nice to be here and to have you all back.
Yes, and we are so excited because today we have a very special guest, and her name is Christine Day. She is a Pleiadian ambassador and has written some very fascinating books about the Pleiadians, including Pleiadian Initiation and the Pleiadian Promise. She talks a lot about tuning in to your multi-dimensional self, and throughout the book really reinforces that we are all multi-dimensional beings. Even though we feel like we are in this 3D realm, there is a thin veil, which is actually getting thinner, that beyond the veil exists this timeless space of our multi-dimensionality. So Matthew, I know you've done a lot of research and had a lot of intuitive guidance around these multi-dimensional realms.
I most certainly have. At an early age, I was tapping into a very high-level consciousness that I believe reigned from the Oversoul perspective, the Elohim perspective, and throughout my journey of initiation and activation, I've also tapped into other aspects of my dimensional self, my multi and trans-dimensional self, because, you know, if we're in the eternal now moment and time really doesn't exist and it's all happening everywhere and every when, I feel there's been a lot of bleed through. And frankly, at a young age, I was reading Jane Roberts and the Seth material, and that was certainly talking about all these perceptions of multi-dimensional everything, from timelines to personalities.
Yes, and there have been many books written about this multidimensionality. Another author that we recognize is Barbara Handclough, who was also a Pleiadian ambassador, but wrote a book that became really popular called The Alchemy of Nine Dimensions. So as we start to talk about these dimensions and what they represent, we're going to start relating them to chakras and archetypes and the platonic solids. So that's going to be really fun. And to start our journey off, I'd like to reference some of what Barbara Handclough has written about the essence of these dimensions. How does that sound?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So these are 9 dimensions of consciousness. And as we move beyond those 9 dimensions, we actually start to move more into the collective group mind, which we are each an integral part of. And then as we move down the dimensions, then we get more into the individual aspects of ourself. And so even in the chakras, I like to think about the first chakra as actually the Earth star, which really connects ourselves into Mother Earth.
Well, there's a lot that could be said about that. There's many stories that have been told about the inner Earth, what exists there, and its connection to the root seems appropriate.
Yes, so the Earth star is just below the surface of the Earth, about 16 inches according to some, and that is ourselves connected to Mother Earth. And then from there, we move up into our root chakra. So according to Barbara Hanklow's work, she is saying that the first dimension is actually the core of Mother Earth. Can you help us understand what the core of Mother Earth might look like?
Well, with the inner Earth concept, there is a golden sun or a energy orb that exists there. And so I think it's really interesting that you kind of got a central sun element, and then you've got the central sun element in the cosmos. And so maybe that also correlates to the as above, so below.
And as within, so without. Yes. And so if we think about a sun or a star actually radiating from the center of Mother Earth, we can start to think about the precious metals. So we would have the core being this golden orb. And then as we move outward, we move more into silver and copper and iron. And we all know that the Earth is filled with a lot of iron, and that gives it its magnetism. So it's so interesting, I think, to explore the first dimension as actually being Mother Earth.
I think it's really important also in your spiritual practices to ground yourself and root yourself. And so you can imagine, this orb or energy field that you can drop your roots into, which begins to anchor yourself so that you can go higher and higher.
Absolutely. We can imagine from our root chakra a spiraling line of energy leaving the base of the spine and connecting right into that golden orb in the center of the earth. That sounds like a really powerful way to start our meditation.
Indeed. So where do we go from there?
Then we have the second realm. And the second dimension is the telluric realm of elementals. So we actually move into then the elements and plants and animals that are on the surface of Mother Earth. So let's start with that level of beingness in the second dimension, knowing that plants have a beingness, even rocks and dirt.
So would there be a correlation to the mineral kingdom then?
Yes, absolutely, because we have many minerals on the surface of Mother Earth as well as within. So let's talk about the minerals on the surface of Mother Earth.
Well, gold is certainly the most unique. The Egyptians and a lot of the ancient civilizations used it, and not for a value of monetary, but for the value of connecting with the higher aspects of consciousness, because it does have a ability to be a superconductor. So I find it the most fascinating, but it's also pretty cool to realize the Egyptians mixed it with silver, and they made the electrum, which they used to coat the walls of most of their sacred temples. So it has an enhanced superconductivity, and consciousness and energy are all forms of light, and to have superconductivity would mean you can accelerate your consciousness.
This is also why the Egyptians took white gold, or ormus, which also balanced the left and right brain.
Ooh, I like the idea of that. I'm sure that that's what we all want to do here on the earth plane, is to accelerate our consciousness, especially those of us who are ascending into the higher dimensions intentionally.
And let's not forget about crystals. So those are part of the elemental kingdom and the mineral kingdom.
Absolutely, and an important part of it. So we have right here in our hometown of Sedona these incredible red rock formations, which are covered in iron ore, but within that iron ore we have quartz crystal. So you can see how the minerals and the quartz actually work together to create an electromagnetism.
And crystals have also been known to be able to transmit information and energy, one and the same again. And let's see, was it the Lemurian crystals that were record keepers? So in the ancient days, they had the ability to put information into call it a device, and then retrieve it from it.
Yes, and we have crystals inside computers that carry information, and these crystal skulls around the planet, I understand, hold consciousness or the Akashic records from all time?
There's many stories to share, and as we explore all these dimensional aspects, I think that will reveal some very interesting things.
Absolutely. So let's move into the third dimension, and that's us. Third dimensional beings residing on the surface of Mother Earth. And that's really where our consciousness is focused right now for this particular incarnation. And we refer to the third dimension as linear space and time, because that's how our experience unfolds here in this dimension.
Well, that would be our 3D body, of course, the physical body, because our consciousness is much like a radio signal. You don't break apart a radio to look for the signal. So, yes, the body is very much a vehicle that's made up of all of these elements, including carbon.
Yes, so right now we're carbon-based beings, physically storing this multidimensional consciousness within.
It has been said through the evolution of the human body and the DNA that there are those that have a silicon DNA structure. So that's tending more towards the crystalline structure. So it's, again, very interesting to see the correlation to these mineral elements.
Absolutely. And as we refer to like the elemental chart, then we can start to see all of the different elements that Mother Earth is made of, we are made of, and that extends into the cosmos truly. Because I understand that when these supernovas explode in the cosmos, they deliver a lot of these minerals and elements to the creation of planetary spheres.
Well, that's what we're being told, and certainly we're discovering a lot of things, and particularly the quantum aspect. So in many ways, we don't even really know scientifically what's going on. We're sort of discovering new things all the time. And so with that, let's move to the next level.
Absolutely. Yes, and the fourth dimension is so intriguing because it's really been referred to as the astral realm. And this is where we explore mythologies and archetypes and gods and goddesses. So that's where we find ourselves now. A lot of people on the earth plane right now are really exploring these types of legends and myths and archetypes because that's very appropriate for this transitional phase between the third and fifth dimensions.
Yeah, and I think it's important to realize in the discovery or the element of discussion that there's 9. We got the 9 numbers. We've got the Ened from the Egyptian gods. You've got in many of the ancient civilizations a correlation to a number. And at another point, we could go down the list of those. Interesting to realize that there could be a direct correlation through the personality type, the characteristics. Also think of the Enneagram, ancient system of 9 different personality types. And maybe there's a direct correlation to each one of these gods as well as the characteristic types.
I couldn't agree more. And since we're talking about that, those fourth dimensional aspects and relating the dimensions to personalities, gods and goddesses, cosmic beings, constellations, archetypes, so now we really start to understand how we have this whole self in the center, if you will, the 13th dimension like we were talking about last time, and then we move out into these 12-dimensional expressions of our multidimensional selves. And it's like microcosm, macrocosm, that goes further into maybe the 13 being the spiraling into the ascension portal, and then each of these 12 aspects of self actually being a constellation or a sacred site. But again, we're relating these places, these dimensions, these personalities and archetypes to these 1 through 9 realms of consciousness.
And let's not forget, the ancients talked about each of the planets having a personality, like Mars, the god of war, or the goddess of love for Venus.
Absolutely. I love that comparison to microcosm, macrocosm, because again, if each of us are a whole soul emanating 12 aspects, and we're like a central sun ourselves, then the sun of our own planetary system is emanating 12 planetary expressions of its multidimensional self.
Indeed, and so the consciousness of the sun projects through the constellations as well. A lot of the alignments we're having, if you think of a screen, right, and the sun is picking up the constellation behind it and transmitting it to us. When you're born, you're receiving those energies of these planets in their houses. So it really is all about the energetics.
And those holographic imprints from that particular planet you're aligned with at the time of your birth are projected onto you. That's why we have personality patterns that match with the personality of that particular constellation.
So it really is a divine system that all of these things are interwoven and interchangeable.
Yes, fascinating. And then let's move into the fifth dimension, where we're all headed at this time, during this auspicious time of ascension. And this is what our Pleiadian ambassador, Christine Day, is talking about when she's connecting into the Pleiadians. Because according to Barbara Handclough, this is the dimension of samadhi, or a state of bliss, and the Pleiadian energy.
Well, the fifth dimension, I think it would be very blissful to step fully into this state of consciousness. And isn't that what it's all about? Working on refining yourself, much like the alchemists talk about turning lead into gold, talk about the mineral kingdom and the elements. So refining your consciousness and having it have a higher frequency is exactly what we're referring to.
Absolutely, and the Pleiadian frequency is the love light frequency, and their central sun is Alcyone. So from Alcyone, they are projecting an abundance of higher frequency rays of love and light.
Now there's different schools of thought, that the Pleiadians are actually sixth-dimensional beings and the Sirians are fifth-dimensional beings. But there's so much information out there, so we won't get lost in trying to correlate exact matches.
Yes, thank you for that. We'll explore these different realms and present possibilities. And then it's really for you to decide. And you can go into meditation and search within for those answers that really resonate with you. Or maybe you have your own connection to your higher guides who are giving you this particular guidance. But the fifth dimension really is this paradise realm where we explore unity and joy and peace and harmony. That would be a blissful state.
Yeah, it's also been talked about that our thoughts manifest. Time is speeding up, ever the more so with these alignments and activations as our consciousness ascends the ladder to, in this case, the ninth dimension, I think is what we're working up to.
Yes, and so moving from 3D through 4D and into 5D, it's really these frequency raising practices like initiations and activations, as well as just going out into the world and being a kind and compassionate person every day in every way.
That's so important. Always operate from your heart. Think before you speak and do what you can to be the best Christ model that you possibly can. It's more important than ever.
Absolutely.
So now we're looking at 6D.
6D. So according to Barbara Handclough, the sixth dimension is all about sacred geometry and what she calls Platonia, which will be referencing the Platonic solids.
Oh, I love this dimension.
I know you're all over sacred geometry, so do tell.
Well, and the way the numbers correlate to the shapes and the angles and all of it is so fascinating. And again, let's not forget how numerology matches a letter, matches a word, and so all these frequencies are being transmitted through the spoken word. And every thought can be correlated to some kind of a mathematical equation. You know, it's said that certainly Pythagoras has said this. He went to the mystery schools in Egypt for 22 years to learn about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And he and other ancient philosophers talked about the universe was created with numbers. And so here we are, breaking it down, dimensionally speaking, one element at a time.
Yes, and one dimension at a time. So it's just so fascinating as we explore all of these dimensions to keep in mind that we are multidimensional beings. And if we consider the eternal now moment, we are really expressing ourselves, all of this multidimensionality, all at once. So while it feels like those dimensions are kind of out there, they are actually the fullest expression of who we are right now, here in this moment. Ready for the seventh dimension?
I am. The seventh dimension and the number 7 is so sacred and so profound. It's all over the ancient scriptures. You know, it does correlate to simple things like 7 days of the week, 7 colors in the rainbow. It's all throughout Revelations with 7 lamps and 7 spirits of God. And it's also really profound to realize that Egypt was called Hepti, which means 7. And within this whole subject, there's a pointing to the path to the higher dimensions. And Sept means 7, and Sept is the ancient name of the planet Sirius. So you also have 7 stars in the constellation of Orion, the knees and the shoulders and the 3 belt stars. And then it's quite profound to realize that the Pleiadian system is also 7 stars. So you actually have a 777 right there in the sky.
Yes, with Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades. Fascinating. And so Barbara Handclough refers to the 7th dimension as the galactic highways of light. So maybe these galactic highways connect Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades to our planetary system and all of these different galaxies within our local universe.
And so if we attach a sacred geometry symbol or a platonic solid to each one of these numbers, what would 7 be? It's the heptagram. It's a 7-pointed star, and it actually correlates to a goddess. In some of the esoteric teachings, they actually say that 7 represents the goddess, it represents hidden wisdom, spirit. It also, in some of these teachings, represents the Virgin. And because this shape, the heptagram, can't be drawn very easily, there's apparently a secret how to draw it in a perfect manner. And so this is supposed to be concealing the secret of the Immaculate Conception.
Ah, hidden wisdom unveiled. Are you going to show us what that 7-pointed star looks like?
We will be taking a look at this 7-pointed star and its correlation to some things, which I love to show my images.
Yes, you do, and they're so very activating. Considering that the 7th dimension may be galactic highways of light, maybe we're light beings and we have the ability to teleport our light consciousness into other galactic realms.
Maybe the 8th dimension.
So let's consider that the 8th realm, according to Barbara Handclough, might be the divine realm of the divine mind. And we all know that 8 actually stands for infinity. So maybe it is an infinite realm.
Well, 8 as a number also represents authority. It represents power. It represents material manifest as well. So it's a very masculine number. And we just came from 7, which is a very feminine number. And in our last show, we talked about the significance of 7 and 8, which adds up to 15-6, which represents the Merkaba and the blending of the above and the below, the male, female, the mind and the heart. So 8 is a great way to take a look at the cosmic aspect of this divine consciousness.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to keep track of all these numbers, and particularly that there's a microcosm and a macrocosm, and all these things do correlate to different properties and values. So when we're talking about the 8th dimension or the 8th chakra, they're not exactly the same. It's standing on the earth, we start to count at our base, and so that means that this is 7 and this is 8, but the correlation to the 8th dimension as the mind of God or this cosmic realm of stellar light is something different.
Ah, fascinating. And then we spiral into the ninth dimension, which is the supermassive black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And according to Barbara, we come out on the other side into the 10th dimension. So we are starting with the first dimension as the center of Mother Earth, and the ninth dimension of consciousness spiraling through the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So that is certainly one fascinating way to look at the multidimensional realms of consciousness. And so as we relate these dimensions to the chakras, it's fascinating to reflect on how the seventh chakra is the crown and the eighth is actually the soul star or the stellar chakra.
Well, there's certainly a correlation here in Egypt too, because they say we come from the stars, we return to the stars, as well as they say we are the stars. So that solar, stellar, star consciousness is a divine consciousness. And when you think about the Aten, which was the sun with those long arms in the hand, that represented a eternal divine consciousness. It was a consciousness that was in the sun. The contrast of that was the Amen versus the Aten. The Amen was a personification of a male deity.
Ah, yes, we usually relate the sun to a male deity and the earth to a female deity. So it's all so interrelated in the multidimensional realms of consciousness. What a fascinating discussion, Matthewis. And it leads us right into our Pleiadian ambassador, who is our special guest today. And I would like to open this with a quote from her beautiful book, The Pleiadian Promise. There is a timeless space that exists beyond the limited third dimensional realm of illusion, when all possibilities exist for you to rejoin yourself. This limited space of time holds the multi-dimensional form of your consciousness, where your full existence resides. You are who you've been waiting for. This is a multi-dimensional moment, allowing you to be independently you within a multi-dimensional level. Enjoy the interview. Hello and welcome to Lighten Up. It is truly my pleasure to be here today with Pleiadian Ambassador Christine Day. Welcome, Christine.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to be on the show, Suzanne. It's really just a special time on the planet and gives me an opportunity to share with others what's going on, what's happening on the planet.
Thank you for that. And you have been on such a remarkable journey. I have been reading your books, The Pleiadian Initiations of Light and The Pleiadian Promise, and I am just blown away by your courage and perseverance and openness to receiving the light. It is such an inspirational journey for us all on that level, and then on another whole multi-dimensional level, you are opening all of us to receive the light as well. And I know that you have been working very closely with the Pleiadians, and thank you for bringing that beautiful Pleiadian energy onto the planet, anchoring that higher frequency and allowing us all to tap into it. Let's start with your journey into this whole awakening process. So tell me, 22 years ago, when your journey really first started into this awakening.
Well, you know, Suzanne, my journey actually started at the age of 31 when I was diagnosed with that advanced systemic lupus and given a very short time to live. I think that was the real true beginning of my journey, even though I didn't recognize it at the time, because I was really, I was floundering in life tremendously, and floundering from my past, all the abuse I had as a child. And here I was in the hospital given that diagnosis and just realizing actually that I wanted to die. It was a very big realization for me. And you know, my life was empty because I just had all the pain from the past, and I had no power, no sense of my own power. I'd been broken down tremendously through my childhood. So then here I am realizing that I wanted to die, and then the inspired thought that I had created something to kill myself. And I knew that to be true. Still makes me very emotional because it was such a powerful moment. And then in the next instant, I got another thought, which I didn't have any really profound thoughts in those days, but it was like, well, I had created something to kill myself. I could create my own healing. And it was like I knew that also to be true. And so in that moment that I chose to act on that truth that I was given, because it was given to me, it didn't come from something inside my own mind. It came from what I feel outside of myself into me, showing me something else. And knowing the truth of it, you know, I left hospital that day, as I write in the book, and that was the moment I took my power back. And you see, I didn't know that at the time, but I took my power back. I said, okay, I created this. I take responsibility for my creation, and I'm going to open up to create the healing. Now that's a huge piece right there, you know.
It is a huge piece.
Yeah.
And you know, knowing that we are living in this collective consciousness as sort of a consensus reality, I love to talk about the parallels in our lives as we move through this awakening process. And I just have to share with you that when I was 30, I was so miserable living in a place that I wasn't attuned with. I felt displaced, living on the East Coast, working in the corporate world of mean-spirited politics, and I was dying inside and outside. I had all of these physical and mental symptoms. I was being rushed to emergency with anxiety. I had eczema so bad that I had open wounds on my skin and my hair was falling out in clumps. I had an opportunity to go visit my parents in the desert of Southern California, and I had this experience where I was called to run to the top of this mountain, and in that moment, I threw my arms up and just said to the heavens, I am miserable in the extreme and I see no way out. And in that moment, I felt this total sense of calm just wash over me, and the air around me felt as if it was literally embracing me, and all of this brilliant light just, you know, like flashed around me, and I felt this total connection to this power outside of myself that was now surging through me. And I heard a voice resonating within me and all around me that simply said, can't you see you've come home? You will stay here and heal yourself and many others. And you are loved more than you can possibly imagine. And in that moment, I knew I had been completely realigned with my true calling as a healer in a desert. Mm-hmm. And I also had not a single doubt in my mind that this was my true path. I had been realigned with, and all of the fear and anxiety simply melted away, and it was replaced by just pure enthusiasm over my new life in the desert as a healer. And like you said, there was a recognition that I had created this miserable life, but that I could uncreate it by being realigned with my authentic life.
It's such a beautiful gift to bring yourself to a certain point and then really resurrect yourself, going from death to life, so that every day you choose to move more and more completely into life again.
So you, after that recognition, that thought that you could uncreate this illness, you could heal yourself, you also simultaneously healed your son.
My son was absolutely involved in a lot of healing with the light that I carried. Once that light came in, It was like putting hands on him, allowing the healing light to come through him, but it was healing me at the same time. And we did go through a very powerful simultaneous healing process together, which was so very, very special. And then, of course, I was told to go out into the world, and I started working and carrying this energy, bringing it through, receiving the understanding, the joy, my whole life transformed. But then came the day when I was walking in nature and turned that corner. Talk about turning a corner. But there was that huge Pleiadian shift with the Pleiadians coming out towards me. And the fact was, you know, I would have run because I didn't believe in aliens, spaceships at that time. But they grabbed my consciousness. They grabbed my and came into a communion with me and brought in all the remembrance of my Pleiadian family, my mission here, my role I was to play. It was truly an astounding experience, deeply, deeply astounding. And so it was like I came right back into carrying my full Pleiadian being. But, you know, I don't even remember getting home that day. I just found myself in bed with this light pouring in, my Pleiadian family around me, and I was actually bedridden for a couple of months while I went through that whole process of bringing in my full Pleiadian light into this body. It was a lot to even wrap my mind around. I mean, it was like I wasn't happy with the situation. I just wanted to be back with God and thinking it was God's light, which of course it was, because the Pleiadians are part of the God consciousness. But I didn't want to be connected to the Pleiadians. I just wanted to have that simple framework of God with me and the path we had trodden together for the last 6 years. But it wasn't to be, and I had to come to terms with my Pleiadian aspect, which was very strong, and my Pleiadian family. And then one day, 2 angels came to me, one either side of the bed, and they said, "You are part of the God consciousness." The Pleiadians are part of the God consciousness. You are not separate from God. This is part of the collective. And I understood the truth of that. And then I was able to kind of start to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And so it was only a few weeks later that I completed that transformation and went out into the world, a very different person, bringing and carrying this high vibration of love out to people. And I've been going all over the world since then, working with these transmissions and going through my own transformation, still having my human part, because I came here to have a human experience, but very strongly interconnected with my Pleiadian family, the galactic community, and of course my own Pleiadian aspect, which allows me to carry these initiations and to do the work that I've said yes to, which, you know, acting as a bridge, becoming that ambassador, really allowing humanity to come to understand. It's like self-empowerment of clarity of what we're doing here, what we need to do, how we take our steps forward. So important at this time. So important.
I just was so enthralled with your Pleiadian initiations of light. And I know that after you shared these stories about Medjugorje and Mother Mary and Jesus and Galilee, that you moved right into the inner child. And then from there started to work with this apex and these spiraling pyramidal energies.
Formation.
Yeah, the formation. Yes. So can you walk us through how that all unfolds and how we can use this sacred patterning and this process in our own awakenings?
Absolutely. This is probably the pyramid form is the center of a space that connects heaven and earth, actually. It connects all the sacred emanations of God, us to those sacred emanations. So as you work with the formation, as you sit in the center of that pyramid form of the formations or sit on the base, you begin to go through a natural evolution of the sacred that you are. And that is the beauty of the formations. They're multidimensional, but they mirror your multidimensionality. We're multidimensional beings. Remember, we have our human aspect, our sacred aspect. The sacred part of ourselves just sits beyond the veil. We're intact, fully intact. Okay, and the Pleiadians, I love the way they talk. They say, you know, it's like awakening from the dream. When you wake up for a dream, you think, oh, I was only dreaming. And what they're saying is that one day we're going to awaken from the dream of being in this world in the third dimension, and the veil will lift, and we'll just simply remember the sacredness that we are. It's reconnection, reunion, remembering. So what the formation does, it takes you beyond the veil to the sacred that you are. And it allows you to start to embody the multidimensionality of your own light, your own sacred heart, step by step, journey by journey, as you evolve. So there's an unlimited level of multidimensional aspects of your own light frequency, which is unique and divine, that you can reconnect to through the formation. And it's such a simple process, because once you enter the base of that formation, you leave the third dimension behind and you start to move back into what is naturally your own multidimensional state, because we're all naturally multidimensional beings. We've just forgotten because we're playing out our human experience. But all of that is shifting now. We're starting to leave that third dimension behind. And part of our evolution is to move beyond the veil and shift back to that remembrance moment where you'll go, oh, I remember now, I came here at this time just to have the human experience, which only lasted a few seconds, because we're in a time warp here where it's the illusion of time. But when you move beyond the veil, it feels like your human process was just a short time. And here it feels endless. So when you move back to align to the sacred, then the story moves forward, where we're to move back into our sacred, still having our human experience, but transforming the relationship with the human part. Because once we go back to the sacred, we can be loving and compassionate to our human part. It's gone through so much. You know, we've suffered, we've been in separation, we've created a lot of different difficult scenarios so we can learn. So with the sacred part of ourselves, we can hold ourselves with this love, compassion, and the human part can flourish in the love, can be nurtured by the love, by the acceptance. You can imagine the relief when you just don't have to try and do it perfectly anymore, where you don't have to try and understand and get it right. All of that is lifted off the shoulders of the human part, so that there can be a real freedom and lightness to living once we go through this transitional phase, this second phase.
I really had this innate sense about this multidimensionality, and that understanding we have this work to do to move through our experiences, especially the traumatic experiences that we have created in this human experience. However, as opposed to spending so much time trying to work through all of those experiences, when we open to this multidimensionality, it makes it so much easier to work through these experiences, and some of them will simply dissolve.
Well, the armoring is already starting to fall away. The energy of karma has already changed on this planet. The karma has completed itself through other lifetimes. The karma's been released, so we can allow it just to fall away like old armoring, so it can melt away, and we can now make our way through that veil to the sacred that we are, because we need to have that. The Pleiadians say we're going to be successful in this transition in this lifetime. So it's going to happen in our lifetime, and so that's why the karma's dissolved, so we can just shrug it off It's just choosing. We close a door, we can open a door. We can change our minds. We've been given permission now not to have to slog our way through, but simply breathe, let go, and choose differently. And that's the beauty of this time. That's the sacredness of this time. And the Pleiadians bring that information forward, so we're self-empowered. Because what they're saying is, yes, they can bring the information and the initiations, but we are the ones that have to do the conscious choice to choose. We will set ourselves free. We will self-resurrect this planet. None of the others can. None of the galactic communities can do that. We have to be the ones to come together and do it as a collective group. And it can be those that are awake at first, and then we hold the space for the rest of humanity to follow.
Yes.
To me, that's beautiful.
Yes.
That is what we're supposed to do. We've come here for this self-resurrection and for our planet Earth to come back into alignment with the rest of the universal community. So I just love the story and the rightness and the truth of that. It's simple and it's truth, you know.
And I love how you have added the incredible illustrations of the formation model and also the audio downloads that really help with the experiential of it and the initiation into it. And it's just such a powerful combination, Christine, and it's just such a blessing to humanity.
It's so important, Suzanne, that you can just have your experience and listen to the frequency that comes through my voice, which is the transmission, and just let go and just allow the full unfolding of yourself. There's an effortless process of just letting go and being. And that's how the Pleiadians want it to be for us. They know us well. As the bridge, I have taught the Pleiadians about humanity, and I've taught humanity about the Pleiadians. And so there's a natural bridge that has been established. And so they know what we need. They bring the recipes, the pure recipes of these beautiful initiations that we can evolve. And it really is beautiful, and it's coded in this love, in this truth, in the simplicity. And I really appreciate that so much.
And then these holograms are being projected also that are assisting us to realign with that authentic part of ourselves, that sacredness within, that also dissolves the illusion and naturally moves us into this multi-dimensional expression of ourselves, a reconnection to the sacred self.
We're repositioned back to the natural state of being. I love that word repositioning, and the Pleiadians insist on it because it's simply we move from this to this. We're looking this way, we turn, and we look that way. And there it is.
Yes.
There we are.
Your diagrams clearly show that process, your 3 diagrams, and that is so powerful. You know, I truly love the visuals. And
well, then you have every aspect. You see, you get to hear, you get to experience and sense, you know, and that really feeds the cells of the body, the energetic field. It feeds the heart. So it really carries and just kind of holds you in that container like a womb for you to birth yourself.
And then can we talk about blueprints? Because it felt to me like this hologram was actually coming from this divine blueprint of perfection of our whole self, and that it was simply mirroring that, and that the same thing is happening for Mother Earth.
It's true. You know, the blueprints are the pure, perfect form. We'll use the body as an example. You know, our body, our physical body has an energetic blueprint. So if you lose a say your tonsils, that blueprint's still there and it's still functioning on an energetic level. Sometimes people get their appendix out or their gallbladder out. The blueprint is in perfect order. So we have an energetic blueprint of our physical form in its perfect state. It's not aging, it's in perfect state since birth, or even if there's a birth defect, the body still comes in with a perfect blueprint. So that we get to be able to realign to that aspect. And part of the blueprint is our divine makeup. It is also included in it. The energy of our divine aspect that can come in and come into every cell in our bodies. So that when you start to align to that, you start to consciously reconnect to that which is you in your purest form. It's through conscious choice we can reconnect and then redesign the body so that it comes into a self-healing potential. It's about choosing to consciously use your power that you have, which is unlimited, for creation, for self-healing, for self-revelation. And so the blueprints are very important. Our Earth has a similar one, except it's carrying the full frequency of the completed transition of consciousness of planet Earth for humanity. And it is holding and reflecting that. Even while we've got all this pollution going on, in a moment of time, that can shift. It's just the illusion. So that's why you don't have to save the planet or save the oceans. It's just simply like an illusion that we are mirroring through our own illusion, and it's just reflecting back to us. So the moment we move into that, back into that state of being, the whole Earth plane becomes pristine once more. So it's a very interesting process, but that's what the blueprints are. And they keep a balance going. People are worried about, the Earth's going to be destroyed. No, the Pleiadians say we're in great shape. We're just playing out the last of the density of the drama. We see plenty of drama going on the Earth plane, within countries, within the world, within families, within communities. But it's really just a big play out. And some people still need to engage in that human drama. So it has to be here for the last threads and pieces to fall into place. That's simply all it is. So they say we're in great shape.
Yes. That is just such a remarkable, new, progressive way of empowering us to self-heal in an instant by mirroring with these perfect divine blueprints of ourself. And we who are in this, powerful awakening process are really the pioneers on the front lines of this whole new progressive way of healing our souls and transforming into these new higher dimensional, multi-dimensional expressions of ourselves. And so opening our minds to this whole new way is just so important. And thank you so much for expressing it so beautifully, and in your book, Pleiadian Initiations of Light, offering the explanations through the Pleiadians, transmitting those energies through the frequency of your voice, providing these beautiful visualizations that make it just such a easy to walk through step-by-step process. It's just so remarkable and has been very empowering for me, Christine. So thank you so much for that. I'd like to move now into this incredible book, The Pleiadian Promise. And I want to read the byline too. A guide to attaining group mind, claiming your sacred heritage, and activating your destiny. Tell us what the Pleiadian Promise is.
Well, that is really an important story, I think, because, I've worked with the Pleiadians for so many years, and they said, okay, you have a new book to write. I woke up one morning and I said, oh, well, my publisher hasn't been in touch with me for a while. I don't know if, they're going to be interested. So I got out of bed and I opened my email, and there was my publisher saying, when can we expect your third book? We want a trilogy. So the Pleiadians were talking about it had to be called the Pleiadian Promise, and it is their final revelation for us, for humankind, to reveal what has been hidden for lifetimes, really, and so that we can be self-empowered with the information and the imprints and the blueprints that we are to receive to make this final transitional step, and that this is their final role of imparting this important information and initiations for the transition, our final transition in the second phase. So it's a book of revelation of things that have been hidden from us because we weren't ready, and self-empowerment for us to be able to use the knowledge, the information, and the clarity of who we are, where we come from, and what we are to do for our enlightenment process. And I just feel like this book was such a profound experience, bringing the information in and carrying the frequencies for these energetics. And so I just feel like it's a very, very important book for the planet right now, for those of us who are ready.
Yes, and reminding us that each of us are an integral part of the collective group mind. I want to start with the beginning of your book, where you talk about moving to this incredible property on Lake Superior and being inspired to build these communication portals that also connect into a Lemurian portal in Lake Superior, and the 4 of those points really creating a pyramid. That is such a remarkable revelation for you and your partner when you move to this beautiful property in Grand Marais in Minnesota.
We're opening up this new energetic form on the meadow. We have 3 acres of land, our own beach, and it's the Pleiadians liken it to a Stonehenge, and it's going to carry the multi-dimensional process for people to evolve and for the final receiving station for the galactic community to come in. And we're opening it up to the public for the first time in 5 years. We had an idea, the first year we'll have people here. No, they kept saying, no one's to come on the land, no one's to come on the land. And finally, July next year, they said, okay, you need to open it up now. So it's been an incredible journey, and it's helped me. Going back to the Pleiadian Promise, also, it's helped me to understand the geography of the resident universe, and then the universes that exist outside, and planet Earth's role. It has a very important role to play, and that's why we have to come back into alignment so we can fulfill and rejoin our resident universe community. So I got a lot more understanding on that. I've been working and building my connection to the galactic community since we've been here. And so I'm now on the Galactic Council and working very strongly through the universe with a lot of things. But being here on the land and building those portals, it took 5 years to do the 2 portals. And they are like nothing that's on the Earth plane right now. They have these multidimensional extensions of pure communication and communion through them, running through them, which helps create the receiving station. And this is where the ships are going to come back into the Earth's atmosphere, and they'll be able to enter here very readily because of the energetic settings. So we have gone through profound initiation here. We're in the middle of nowhere, on the edge of the wilderness. We're in a town of 1,300. It goes down to 200 in the winter. So, you know, we're in a very isolated space, but we get taken off planet. The Pleiadian ships come in. We've had about 6 ships in this week, setting up some very special energies here. So it's been and is, continues to be a grand adventure that we have to continually just let go of. That's, you know, we don't have a choice. We just let go and just go with the flow.
Thank you so very much. I just feel so blessed. Namaste to you, my friend.
Namaste to you too, Susanna.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Wasn't that interview with Christine Day just so passionately heart-centered? Her experiences with Jesus in the Sea of Galilee, Mother Mary in Medjugorje, and of course the Pleiadian community and the entire galactic community, as well as the Inner Earth Lemurians. So we were so very excited to have that very special opportunity to interview her.
Oh, it was very powerful.
Yes. All right, hang on to your hats. The GAO, Golden Age Oracle herself, is calling in, and I'm sure she has some profound revelations to share with us about multidimensionality. Welcome, Megan.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
We're so excited to discuss the multidimensional realms of being with you because I know you have some really fascinating insights about the multidimensional aspects of ourself.
The process of accessing your gifts is about connecting into your higher dimensional self and channeling those into your being.
As I was starting to explore my overself and tuning into my higher guides, this ability to tap into these 12-dimensional aspects of my multidimensional being, I was able to bring through that my overself actually has a name, Anja, which came to me in a powerful dream where I was awoken by this loud voice saying, "Your eternal name is Anja," which actually turned out to mean eternal grace in an ancient Russian language. But in any case, so I was envisioning that my eternal self, my whole soul, was Anja. And then I was shown how each of these 12 selves that I was emanating represented a dimension. And so I was able to identify, my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional identity, if you will. And they all also turned out to be on different in different star systems. So while the 3 and 4D were ego personalities here on planet Earth, as I moved into 5, it became my Lyran self as Lorenzi. Then I moved into 6 and it became Shalene from Arcturus, and 7 became Bethesda from the Pleiades. So I thought that was really interesting that I could have a whole soul expressing these 12-dimensional aspects of being, but then when I would move out into, say, a 3rd-dimensional aspect of myself, then I could explore the 12 aspects of my 3D self that I was having. So I was able to look at the different 12 incarnations in the 3D realm. And so this kind of correlates with Dr. Joshua David Stone's work, where he's saying each of us is emanating 12 aspects of our soul, and at the same time we are emanating 144 aspects of our monad. And so that's what's kind of revealed when you think about 12 dimensions of yourself, and then in each one of those dimensions there's actually 12 incarnations.
So monad would imply a supercluster?
So a monad is a greater expression of your whole self. So you become a greater and greater being. So as you become one with 12-dimensional aspects of yourself, you move into larger and larger versions of yourself. So when you're able to become one with the 144 aspects of multidimensional beingness that you are, you start to become a larger and larger being.
And I've known people that have been able to do that before. I've met them, and they can, they say Earth is the headquarters, and they can just instantaneously be in the consciousness of that being or personality anywhere in any existence. So there are stories of how bizarre it is and that you can attain these things.
It is really quite interesting, and what I like about the way that you've dissected it, and with the 9-dimensional versions of yourself, plus the 1, 2, 11, 12 that are always the same, is that, again, we talk about having your individuality in these lower dimensions, and then they're all, and then we all vibrate from the same kind of personality or archetypes from the higher dimension. So that, I find that to be really interesting.
Yes, I found out that like 3 through 11 were the 9 dimensions of consciousness, but then 12, 1, and 2 were the same for everyone as beauty, deity, and Aten.
Yes, and this might be information that some have read, but we have Sanat Kumara as a planetary logos for this planet, and so many of, or if not all of the avatar beings that have incarnated have been braided with Sanat Kumara, who is the essence of the Father, who happens to be the planetary logos for planet Earth. And then on top of that, I had an interesting experience, and I want to share this because we might not all have the same awareness of this, or it might not happen the same for all of us. And that I was going through this period where I was doing a lot of channeling for a project that I was working on, and so one evening I'm sitting on my couch and I'm just alone, and my head kind of flies back, and I see all of the multi-dimensional versions of myself, and it flashes through like hundreds of them. So maybe this is the 144, and I see this all the way up to the Creator being, and who I am in all of these realms. And then a voice says to me, okay, now you know who you are, but remember right now you're Megan. And it's time for Megan to climb up that ladder and take her seat at the table. And so that's what you're doing now. And so it was like a flash of a second with all of these incarnations, but it was important for me to connect in with them and kind of integrate them into myself. But I didn't need to stare at them for long periods of time or analyze who they were in order to connect with them. And then right after that happened for me, I took an astral travel up to, I don't know where, but I met one of these golden beings who I believed at the time to be our Creator. And it was this being of light, pure light. Didn't seem to have a gender. Its body was just like a robe, but also a body. And it was so large, this being, that in my full-grown human body, I was about the size of a toddler or child that sat in its arm. And all it did, this light being, was emanate pure, unconditional love. And there were no words exchanged because they weren't needed. And we talk about that being your highest self is when you get into that light body. Above all the elements and the minerals and the crystals, is that highest self is the light body. So perhaps, it was this trip that let me know, we talk about Christ consciousness and I am God. I may have been sitting in the lap of myself in my highest dimensional version.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because we are all one in the mind of God. We are all holographic projections of the mind of God. So in that, we are all one. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that and all of your profound revelations. Always so exciting to have the GAO tune into our show.
Absolutely.
And just to wrap up the show with a really inspirational message from J.J. Hurtak out of the Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch. When you surrender your personal ego and identity to God, you are able to rise up to a space-time overlap, working with your spiritual brothers and sisters through multi-dimensional space and time. This is essential for the ongoing fulfillment of consciousness, so as to be one with continuity and change within the evolutionary continuum and ascension career. So thank you so much for joining us, Megan. Thanks so much for all of your insight, Matthewis. And thank you for joining us for this extraordinary episode of Lighten Up. And remember, live well, love life.
And blessings abound.
While everything is accelerating, it is still a good idea to get yourself your 7th seal activator. This ascension tool will increase your frequency and work with you in a very specific way, as the divine intelligence of this device knows what to do within your system. If you've never had a Kundalini activation, prepare yourself. If you've already been on your journey and your heart has already been awakened, or your third eye, this energy will proceed to your crown and expand you into higher levels of awareness. Go to my website, www.7sealcodes.com, to find out more. You can also search for the 7 Seal Activator in eBay. For only $11, you can accelerate your ascension process.